you to welcome him to our Olympic Stage dinner.
Appreciate it. Good evening. So a lot of you know me already, legislators in the room. I appreciate your involvement and your efforts in Harrisburg. What would bring me here? FOAC is a nonpartisan organization. I'm required to say that by the IRS, actually. And if you can believe it, we try to stand by that. What does that mean? That means for us that everything that we do here in Pennsylvania is about the Second Amendment and only the Second Amendment. To be honest with you, I don't care about the others, because without the Second Amendment, we don't have the others. So this becomes a big topic for us, and we've worked with a lot of your local legislators here who, fortunately for you, are the majority very pro-Second Amendment in Beaver County. Not all, but the majority. Why would I come to a Republican dinner then, right? I mean, if they're already working with us and they're already doing what we need to have done, why would I have to stand here? Well, it kind of goes back a little bit in history for me. At 17 years old, I enlisted into the service. Against the wishes of a Vietnam veteran father, I found myself at 18 laying across a machine gun in a snowdrift in upstate New York, freezing my butt off, listening to something called the Rush Limbaugh Show. That was the beginning of my Republican life. Since then, 30 years in law enforcement, and then obviously many of you knew Kim Stolford. Kim put a gun to my head and said, "You're the new president of FOAC." That was a wonderful moment. And since then, I've been doing what I can to crisscross the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and make sure that pro-gun legislators rule the day in Harrisburg. Obviously, if you look around this room and ask every legislator in here, are you pro-Second Amendment? I think you're going to get the right answer. Not necessarily the same thing if I were to walk across the hall in Harrisburg and ask the same question. And I can tell you that because I've done it. We meet with some of the legislators on the other side of the aisle, and they have guards in the room, or they hide behind a door to wait and hear what we want to talk about, and then they step out. I don't have to worry about that here in Beaver County, and that's important to me. One of the things that a lot of folks have here, and we talk about the presidential election and the national elections, is hope. I think hope's kind of a big thing, right? We have a lot of folks that have come up and said, look at the national election, look how well everything went for us. And that's all well and good, that's great. FOAC's only worried about Pennsylvania. And the problem we have in Pennsylvania is we didn't get the down ballot voting that we needed. How do I know that? Ask any of your representatives from your House of Representatives what they have to deal with every day as they come and go from Harrisburg. It's beyond stupid. It's lunacy. And I can stand up here and say that because I'm nonpartisan. I know what's lunacy and what's not, right? I don't have to sit there and tout a party line. What I'm telling you is I know that every Republican legislator in this room is doing the exact thing they would do with or without us, but they make us happy in doing it. They're abiding by the Second Amendment or Article 1, Section 21 here in Pennsylvania. I don't need to call Josh Gale, Senator Rothman. I don't need to call Roman. I don't need to talk to Elder Vogel and say, are you sure you understand what Article 1, Section 21 is? That's not an issue. I had Abby Major on a meeting last night. She's the head of the Second Amendment caucus in the House, talking to our membership to make sure they understand it's not just me explaining the current politics in Pennsylvania. They're hearing it from someone who's engaged with it, and I welcome any of you to join us anytime to do so. I don't think this is a room where I have to explain why the Second Amendment is important. What I do think is I have to explain why we all have to work together to make sure the pro-gun legislators win in 2027. That's a little bit different, isn't it? Because we're talking about a lot of Pennsylvanians that were willing to go up and vote and sit there and say, well, I stand for this and I stand for that at a national level, but then they still went in and they threw a particular switch in a voting poll because that's what their daddy used to do. And that's a problem for us. Or we go to places like Elk County and Forest County where people don't want to vote because they're still under the impression that if they step forward and they cast a vote, the government now knows where they are. I'm sorry, but if you're paying your taxes, they know where you are, and if you're not paying them, they're going to find out really quick, right? So that shouldn't be an issue here in Pennsylvania. So my hope is that we can continue to work together with the legislators that are here and grow this effort to make it a pro-gun General Assembly all across the board. Make it a pro-gun governor's house across the board. That's all that matters to me. And if you're willing to help us do that, I will stand by you, beside you, in front of you if necessary to make sure it happens in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I also hope you have a great night. Thank you.
Kathy, if you could please join me at the stage. We'd love to hear you. Thank you for bringing a copy of the book too. It's an amazing looking book.
Thank you.
I can't wait to get into one.
Thank you so much. And Chris, thank you. And where's the fabulous Fabiola? Isn't she awesome? And the committee who worked on that dinner and putting the program and the seating, the environment. It is so great. Thank you all so much for inviting me. I'm just going to do this, shamelessly. My books are right over there, $20 each. I hope you get one. And because I'm going to be speaking tomorrow, let me just get this out of the way. Where is Wendy? Wendy, right here in the middle. I'm going to be speaking at an event she's putting together, Reignite Republican Women. It's a brunch at 10:30 a.m. at his place, Bridgewater. So see Wendy for more details, and I hope to see you guys there. Hopefully, I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit more intimate so we can really do some talking back and forth and strategizing. But tonight, I just want to talk to y'all for a moment. How many of you saw what happened at the White House today with Zelensky? Ouch. So not that many people, most of you didn't see it. How many of you saw it? How many of you heard it? Yeah. Right? Wow. And it was so apropos. I was almost late getting here because I kept watching one person video after another person. And y'all know what happened when you start scrolling on Twitter or X now. You get lost. But we were talking about it, my friend and I, we were driving here, that this moment that we're living in, it feels, I was trying to find the right word, and the only word I could think of was pregnant. Like something is about to be birthed. I don't know if it's a good something or a bad something, but I feel as though we're standing on the precipice. That this moment is not like every moment that we've lived through. Am I the only one that feel that way? It's been a call on my heart, like a pounding at the door of my heart, that this moment is not like every other moment. That we are witnessing something, and that little stunt, Zelensky coming in hot, he came in real hot. And praise the Lord that we now have leaders with a backbone, made of something a little bit sturdier than ear cartilage. I am so grateful for that, because this moment, come hell or high water, good or bad, we are going to need a stronger mind than the one we had who just left office. We're going to need someone who understands the times we're living in. In fact, that's really my message for you guys tonight. Is that as we stand on this moment, it feels like, I remember when I was pregnant, moms out here, you may identify with this, unconsciously, I started doing this little thing they call nesting. Getting ready, preparing. And had I not been reading a ton of books about what to expect when you're expecting, I would not have been able to identify that in this moment, I'm nesting unconsciously. I just feel like I need to start moving some things around and finishing off that to-do list. That's my message to you. I feel like we are on the edge of a moment that is not like anything. I know people are, well, we're winning and the memes and they gotcha and popping champagne. But there's a moment that I think is very serious, very real, that we are standing at the door of. And as I've been wrestling with that kind of feeling on the inside of me, I've been paying attention, spending a lot of time with the Lord, for one, but also getting really silent so that I can hear what it is I need to do. And that's what I've been doing, is a lot of nesting, as if right before something gives birth. And a lot of that nesting activity I've been doing is really understanding the moment, understanding the times that we're living in. Because if you don't understand the times you're living in, you're going to miss your moment. You're going to miss why all of this is here in the first place and why you're still here on this side of heaven. I was thinking about, when Fabiola and Chris called and asked for me to come and speak at the Lincoln Day dinner, I started thinking about Abraham Lincoln, one of my favorites. He freed my people. No, literally. I have the blood of slaves coursing through my veins. I grew up in very rural Alabama. Most of you probably have heard my story. I won't go down that particular path. But I spent a lot of time studying our founding fathers, studying Abraham Lincoln. And one of the things about each of these great men who have come before us is that they understood the times they were living in. And they understood it so much that when they were called upon, when it was on their watch to do something, they stood. They were present. They were ready. They didn't trip over a lot of things. They were very resolute when you read the books and read the letters and read the stories about where they are. But in order for us to also be ready, what did Reagan say? Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Guess whose generation we're in right now? Ours. The one. Who said that? We're in the one. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Guess which generation you're in right now? The one. You're in that one. And it's on your watch. We love talking about our founding fathers did this. I'm so grateful for them. But guess what? They're dead. And now it's on your watch. And unless you're present, unless you because the noise is here. I know I'm not the only one that feels this. But unless you get quiet enough to hear it, you're going to miss your moment. And how can we show up and be ready for the times we're living in if we got a plank in our eye? How can I go and remove the speck out of your eye if I'm walking around here with a plank in my eye? So tonight I want to talk about this whole nesting thing, what I've been doing. And I just want to share it with you because I think it's important. It's been really about identity. A lot of it. Who am I? Who are you? Why are you here? What is your purpose? What are we doing this for? Understanding that. And the first thing, I love history. I've read a lot of books to my children. One of them, and I put it in my purse. I was going to open it up and crack it open and start reading it as we were driving here. But it is Marcus Aurelius. Y'all know him, one of the great emperors. And I'm going to try to get this quote right. I keep forgetting it. But he says, do you remember? If you want to live, the quality of your life is dependent upon the quality of your thoughts. If you want a great life, look at your thoughts. Your thoughts make up the content of your mind. And wherever your mind goes, the rest of you is going to follow. This is a great man, one of the greatest emperors of Rome, and he kept a diary. And in that, I'm paraphrasing it, but the quality of your life is dependent upon the quality of your thoughts. We need to grab our thoughts. If your thoughts are nothing more than 5 hours of playing Candy Crush and 2 hours scrolling on Twitter, you're going to miss your moment. Because your mind is not going to be ready for what is going to be demanded upon you. And yes, Donald Trump won, praise the Lord. But he can't do it all by himself. If we've learned anything from 2020, is that he can't do it by himself. We're going to be like leeches and we're going to drain the man. I remember 2016, Donald Trump won. I'm like, yeah, he got that. And every time Democrats did something crazy, be like, yeah, Donald Trump, he got that. It's going to call upon you. But how can you show up and be ready for your moment? If there's a plank in your eye, you've done no work in nesting and cleaning up your thought life, figuring it out who you are, why you're here, what are you supposed to be doing. And if you're spending 20 hours on Facebook every day, because you're supposed to be working, but you're not, I know, I'm there too. Then what are you filling your time with? Secondly, on the door of my room, of my office, and I wrote it in the books, those who purchased it, I have stenciled upon my wall a quote from Frederick Douglass where he said, knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. And if you know his story, you understand the power of that. Once you know, you can't unknow. Now I know. You were saying earlier, once you see, what is your name again? Kasaya. She is new to the Republican Party, always conservative, but just joined her and her husband. Y'all stand up. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. This is the future of the party. They just joined. When this is over, do a beeline. He's an air traffic controller. We never knew how important that job was until about a month ago, right? He's going to leave soon, so y'all do a beeline. Welcome them. Show them love. Thank you so much. Once you know, you can't unknow. I am not the same person I was in 2016. I've lived through some things. Y'all have lived through some things, right? Whoever thought it would have gotten as bad as it did? Talk about one generation away from extinction. I don't know how close we were to extinction, but it felt real close. These people are not playing with us. Let me just pause here for a moment. These people are not playing with us. I was, by the grace of God, after my run, I don't know if you guys know me, I'm Kathy Barnett. I ran against Dr. Oz, Dave McCormick back in 2022. I'm that girl. And after that race, yeah, I was pissed, licking some wounds. But I remember having a fork in the road moment. And I tell you no lie, I could hear the Spirit of God say, so, are you going to be bitter now? I had every right to be bitter. They lied. And they stole an opportunity that was mine. I could have stirred that pot up until, I could have been like Zelensky, 7 years later, still stirring that pot. But look how crazy he looks, right? We're talking about tomorrow. He's talking about 8 years ago, right? Looking crazy. And because I believe, I decided I won't be bitter. The reason I got involved in politics are still my reason. I love my country. I believe the overwhelming majority of the leaders we have suck, and I think we can do better. That was the reason why I ran. That's the reason why I stayed involved. Those are still my reason. I love this country. I want to see us do well. And because I did not stir the pot, but decided to always see the glass half full, Vivek Ramaswamy messaged me, and we started hanging out. And I was the first person he brought onto his campaign. And when we started, he was at 0.0 in the polls. Now look at him. And I'm grateful to have had a part in that. But as we were traveling around the nation, because if you listen to mainstream media and Twitter, you think our nation is divided 50-50. You think, how in the world are we going to overcome all of this hatred and vitriol? You know what I discovered as I was traveling all across the nation? We are not as divided as they would have us to believe. There is a division, but it's more like 80-20. The 80% on our side. The problem is that the 20%ers, these people they've learned nothing since November. They are completely unrepentant. I spend a lot of time in D.C. right now. These people are completely unrepentant. They have learned nothing. And if we don't figure out who we are individually and who we are as a party, we're going to miss the moment. And in 2026, these people are going to come back like a bad case of herpes. They are not, I don't know what that feels like, but I'm assuming it's hot. They are not playing with us. Do you see? We're now discovering that they sent $50 million to Gaza for condoms. We're discovering they spent $20 million on a Sesame Street in Iraq. They spent $37 million on a transgender opera in Peru. They spent $32,000 on a DEI musical in Ireland. We just found out they spent $59 million for 1 week of hotel stay for illegals in New York. We just found out they spent $122 million going to an organization with direct ties to Hamas, Hezbollah, and Al-Qaeda. And you know what bulldog face Maxine Waters is doing? Y'all know her face looks like it's sliding. I don't care. I'm not running for office right now. But these people are literally holding rallies, trying to get us to feel bad that the people who's been defrauding us and scheming us and stealing from us are getting fired. Talk about tone deaf. Talk about not understanding the crowd. They are unrepentant. There is not a bone in their body. The only thing they're pissed about is that you're aware. Our founding fathers and Abraham Lincoln and so many others up and down that spectrum, they were not marble statues. They were flesh and blood. But they understood the times they were living in. And when they saw it, they stepped forward at great cost. But they were ready. I have basically went to every single one of their homes, our founding fathers in the Philadelphia area. And when you walk into their room, the docent meets you at the door. And almost always, invariably, to the left, they show their library. And these were rooms, and they would say they had books from the floor to the ceiling, and they read all of them. So going back to what Aurelia said, the quality of your life is going to be based upon the quality of your thoughts. Do better. We all must do better. Oh, wait a minute. Give me like 5 more minutes. I'll wrap it up. Secondly, I'm going to go real quick right here. Secondly, know your children. Don't stop sending your children out here in the world like blank checks for other people to write on. For other people to write their agenda on your children. They got your children fighting the hard fight for Hamas in these universities. They got your children out here cutting off breasts, chemically castrating themselves. They got your children out here welcoming and trying to get in more illegals, literally destroying their own futures. But it's because we as parents got to do a better job of making sure our children understand their identity. Who are you? Know who you are. Know why you're here. It's not the school's job to do it. It's your job as a parent. And all of these young people spending their whole lives on TikTok. It's not real world. These people are lying. They're miserable when they get off. My background is finance. I love balance sheet. That's just a snapshot in time. You don't know what happened after they took that photo on Instagram and what happened right before it. It's not real. But stop sending your children out here like blank checks for other people to write on. They're looking for a purpose. Show them that purpose. Lastly, stencil across my wall, Frederick Douglass. Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. But you know what I've learned recently? Is that knowledge without courage is still slavery. I remember being out here. Everybody looked at me like I'm the radical one when I said there was only 2 genders. People looking at me like I'm the crazy one. I'm like, I know I'm not crazy. And I am not going to stand here and give an inheritance to my children as if I don't know what a boy is and what a woman is. I refuse to do it. And of course, they malign me, being hateful and yada, yada, yada. I already knew boys should not be competing with girls. I already knew that. And prepared my family that if I see a boy on the track with our daughter, I'm not going to be the only one feeling uncomfortable. I'm going to make it my business to make them feel uncomfortable, right? Oh, no, but they labeled me. I'm a phobic, I'm a this, I'm a that. I don't care. I don't care. And I never will forget when someone said, thank you for having so much courage. And they were applauding me for it, and it didn't feel like courage. It just felt like, what's today? Friday. It just felt like another Friday. Like, this is true. I have the blood of slaves coursing through my veins. I refuse to willingly be a slave. There were a lot of opportunities over these past 8 years when we needed more people to have a backbone and to say the obvious. Trust me, a moment is coming. And you are going to have to pull out that backbone that's been stored in your closet. And you're going to have to put it back in and arrive for the moment. And I leave you with Reagan one more time. Freedom is only one generation away from extinction. What generation are you in right now?
That one.
That one. Thank you, guys. If I don't see you again, take care of yourself, love your family, hold your children, get involved. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kathy. That was wonderful and inspiring. I'm going to call an audible here and switch up the order of the program. I'd like to introduce Senator Greg Rothman, PA State Chair, to share some remarks. If there's anyone who knows courage, it is him. He's been through a lot, and I respect him tremendously. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your service. 10 years, 25 years in the Coast Guard, right? Wow. I only spent 10 years in the Marine Corps. But we all wish we had joined the Air Force, right? And Kathy, thank you for your service. What a personality and what a message. So thank you all. Thank you for having me. I want to recognize some of my former colleagues and current colleagues. Representative Jim Marshall, I had the honor to serve with in the House. Roman, who I am now serving with in the legislature, but you've got big shoes to fill, we know, and it's nice to see you. Jeremy Schaefer, also in the House from Allegheny County. Commissioner Camp, thank you. Thanks for being here. I should note that I saw Ashley Duff, the new chairman of the Washington County GOP. Thank you for being here. I love when counties work together and enter together. I've only been chairman of the state committee for about 3 weeks, but I've been involved in politics in Pennsylvania for 40 years. I currently serve in the Senate. I had the really distinct honor last session to be vice chairman of the Senate Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee with your great senator, Elder Vogel. As decent as a human being and kind to me. My father grew up on a farm. My grandfather raised steers, but I'm a suburban legislator, and so I came in there representing a very rural and agricultural-based district in central Pennsylvania, and Elder Vogel Chairman Vogel let me do what I wanted to do, and I'm grateful for that. And you have a great senator. He also captained my farm show dairy milking team and taught me how to milk cows. I will tell you, there was a dairy farm next to my grandfather's steers, and I used to go there as a kid, and I remember the first time they had like the electronic, or the robotic, yeah, and thank you. So, and I for the longest time thought this was a cat farm because there were cats everywhere. So, there were no mice, and your wife, Sue, thank you so much for being here and welcoming me here. And as your chairman talked about, I ran for county chairman because thanks to all of you, we changed the course of history in November. You literally changed the course of history. And I agree with Kathy that we would not have recognized the country. We were starting to not recognize the country, and had Kamala Harris been elected, we would not recognize the country. And we know that now. So you all changed the course of history. And so what I want to do as a county chairman, united, build off of what we did in November to turn Pennsylvania into a permanently red state. We have some great judicial candidates. You're going to hear from Matt Wolford after me. He's running for Commonwealth Court. Judge Anne-Marie Wheatcraft from Chester County, who was a prosecutor and for 14 years and served on the Court of Common Pleas, is a judge, knows how difficult it is to be a judge, is going to make a great Superior Court justice. So I appreciate if you would sign their petitions and work for them between now and November to get them elected, because the judiciary means something. Those of us who legislate, I missed one legislator, but I'm going to get to him in a second. Those of us who legislate get very frustrated when people on the court think that they're the ones to make the law. And as I like to say to them, if you wanted to legislate, run for the legislature, not for courts. So we need judges who understand the Constitution is what they're to uphold the Constitution, they're to rule on whether or not the laws that we passed are constitutional and nothing else. And so we have a really unique opportunity in November when there will be 3 Democratic, radical, liberal judges who have done things like strike down the voter ID law that Jim Marshall and several, and probably Senator Vogel certainly voted for, who allowed the governor supported the governor in all of his draconian COVID measures and said they were constitutional, which they weren't, who ignored the Constitution on all kinds of issues, who talked about during their campaigns how they would rule on future issues like gerrymandering, and then, by the way, gave us these incredibly gerrymandered maps, which is the reason why Josh and Roman are still in the minority, are back in the minority, or in the minority in the House of Representatives. So we have that opportunity in November to vote no on those 3 judges. It's an election. We will vote no on the 3 Supreme Court justices. So, now to talk about Mr. Kale, or the Kales. I would not be standing here as your party chairman if it wasn't for Abby Kale. That's clear. And since your chairman invited me to be here, I have been practicing this since I accepted the invitation. So Josh stays at my house, used to stay at my house when we were colleagues. I had a lot of legislators staying at my house, including Speaker Torzai had his own suite. But Josh asked if, can I bring the kids? So I think it was Solomon came, right? And I'm like, this kid's going to be governor someday, and I want to be there. And so one day he said, can I bring a couple more of the kids? So I went from Solomon, Manny, Annika, right? Petra, Eli Petra, I'm confusing. Evangelina, Clea, and Vi, right? I get all 8? Right? So I say, yeah, sure, and I come home, and I have a pool. I come home to my house, I totally forgot that I had invited the Kales over. And there are Kales everywhere. And I walk upstairs, we have like a couple staircases, I walk upstairs, and I have a much bigger house than I should, but I walk upstairs, and I say, oh, because I have some kids too, and I'm like, there's a baby doll on the floor. It's not a baby doll, it's Vi. I mean, there were kids of 5, but I will tell you that I have had an incredible life. I've met some incredible people, just amazing. I'm so fortunate to have the friends, and I have met some really impressive people that went on to do great things. Josh Kale is one of the most special people I've ever met in politics. And we met, you won't even believe this, we met in a fitness center gym room lifting weights one morning and started talking about faith. I met the only other Reformed Presbyterian Calvinist in the Republican, right? Yeah, right? We've had this conversation too. Josh just blew me away from the first time I met him. And I think his colleagues felt the same way. That's why he was elected in leadership. I have a little brother who's 5 years younger than me. He was 6'2", 6'3". He's a lawyer, and I taught him how to play every sport, and then he did it better than me. I taught him how to do everything because he was 5 years younger than me, and then he did it better than me. And so Josh Kale was my deputy when I was chairman of the House Republican Campaign Committee, and I taught him how to raise money, and then he did it way better than me. So I love Josh like a brother, and Abby and the Kale family, but you have a really special group of legislators here, and Josh is right there. So I miss serving. It's the only thing I miss about the House elder is serving with these guys. So look, this is what we're going to do. We have a voter registration gap that has gone from 1.2 million Democrats versus Republicans. That's the advantage they had. We're down to under 200,000. And so guys like Scott Pressler and all of you, we're going to continue to register voters to get to the point where we have parity. I mentioned we're going to elect these judges. We have now, coming off of the greatest election in my lifetime. I told a reporter the other day I thought it was the best election for Republicans since 1866. And Kathy, that was the year the Republican Party won a civil war, right? That was our war, we won that. We won 39 out of 50 Senate seats that year in the U.S. Senate and 139 out of 200 House seats. This was the best election. Dave McCormick, oh my goodness, beat the Casey dynasty. What an incredible victory. Thanks to all of you. And we won every one of those row officers. And then we have a Republican Attorney General, and we have a Republican Treasurer, Stacey Garrity, and Tim DeFore. We picked up 2 congressional seats, and we won a seat in Northeast Philadelphia where Senator Vogel and I served with this young man, 29 years old, Joe Picozzi, who won a seat in Philadelphia by knocking on 70,000 doors. We're going to win back the House in 2026. And then in 2026, we're going to beat Josh Shapiro. I've done a lot of interviews the last 3 weeks, and everybody wants me to ask me, well, who's going to be Josh Shapiro? And I keep answering with the same question. We are going to be Josh Shapiro. It doesn't matter who the candidate is. We are going to beat Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro is not a leader. He is not principled. Those of us who serve in the legislature know he doesn't believe anything. Certainly he's not a moderate. And this is the man who went on Fox News and said, every child of God deserves a shot, that's why I support school choice, and then vetoed the tuition assistance, lifeline scholarships that we put into the bill. So Josh Shapiro, we're going to find out. We have an expression, I was a Marine, we have an expression that guy's never been punched in the face. Josh Shapiro doesn't know how to take a punch. We found that out when he was being vetted for vice president, and we are going to beat him. So, just one quick thing. I want to just talk about civics for a second. There is a difference. I've been talking about this for a couple months now. There is a huge difference between the American Revolution, 1776, we're about to celebrate the 250 years, because we said that rights came from God, right? Not from each other, from God. That's paternity. The French Revolution that happened 8 years later, right? They said that the rights came from each other. It was paternity, a fraternity, not paternity. And then that ended with the guillotine and Robespierre and the Reign of Terror. And I recently learned, I'm ashamed to say I just learned this a month ago, but 200 years ago, 50 years after the American Revolution, Marquis de Lafayette, who was 17 years old, one of the wealthiest men in all of France because he had inherited all his money, bought his own ship, begged a Pennsylvanian, Ben Franklin, to help the Revolutionary War effort, and probably did more to help the Revolutionary War than certainly any other non-citizen. 17 years old, comes and fights in Brandywine and is wounded, is there in Yorktown when the surrender takes place. Marquis de Lafayette came back to the United States 50 years after the Revolution, came to Harrisburg to talk about. He was a hero of two nations. But what I did not know, I'm ashamed to say I did not know, is that Marquis Lafayette was imprisoned for 3 years during the Reign of Terror. I mean, that'd be like us imprisoning George Washington. But there's a difference between America's revolution and French's. They had 17 constitutions since we had our one. So remember that the rights we have don't come from each other. Because if I can give you rights, I can take them away. And that's what we saw in France. The rights come from God, and the government is here to protect those rights. So I've been talking about that. Last night I heard a great lecture about, and I'll wrap this up, about France in 1940. A social scientist named Mark Bloch wrote a book called Strange Defeat. And he talked about how France is losing their identity by not talking about, as Kathy Burnett said, who we are. There's no civics. We don't talk about. I went to Normandy, France last summer for the 80th anniversary, right after the 80th anniversary, and our tour guide told me that every single kid in French schools, from first grade through when they graduate, every year is taught about how the Americans and the British and the Canadians came on June 6th and liberated their country from the Nazis. But we don't teach it we don't teach civics. We don't test civics. We talk about lots of things in public education. We don't talk about what it means to be be an American. So this guy, Mark Bloch, writes this book about how he's fearful that since France doesn't talk about who they are as their identity, that they could be defeated by a foreign evil power. And of course, it didn't take much. The Nazis came in and they took over France. He was part of the resistance, was killed in 1944, and it wasn't until after the war that they actually published the book. So we are different. And I love what Kathy Burnett said about that these are not marble figures. George Washington and Abraham Lincoln weren't mythological figures either. They were men just like us, and women just like this room. So you're all going to do your part. We are going to make sure that Pennsylvania turns into a permanently red state, reliable Republican state. You changed the course of history, and now we are going to, with your efforts, going to stay on that course and make sure that America continues to be that shining city on the hill. So thank you all. God bless you, and God bless America.
I'd like to introduce Matt Wolford as our candidate for the Commonwealth Court Judge. He's from Erie. He's a sailor, so as a Coastie, I love him. I'd love to hear sea stories from him all day long, and hope you enjoy talking with him as much as I do. Thank you.
So we just had 3 inspiring speakers and now some boring lawyer stuff. You guys are all excited about that, I'm sure. My name's Matt Wolford. I'm running for Commonwealth Court. I'm going to talk about why in a few minutes. I'll start by giving a little bit of my background. But before I get to that, one of the things that I was saying to the caucus people at the winter meeting, and I'm going to say it to you folks too because it's a different audience, mostly different audience. I get up every morning and I'm a talk radio guy, and I turn on the radio and I hear about whatever the new thing is that's coming out of a sane White House. And it just makes my day. And I get a big old smile every day because we finally have sanity in Washington and all the great things that happen. It's because of you guys. And so I want to thank you for that. Okay, a little bit about I'll try to be brief because we've been going for a while. My background is I've been a lawyer for 37 years. I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. I have a wife. My wife actually came tonight, Marion, 32 years. We have 4 children, all in their 20s. They're all college graduates, and they all are doing very well. So that part's great. I went to Penn State undergrad. I have a friend of mine recently said, well, all you got to do if you want to win statewide elections is say you went to Penn State. That's it. So you're done. So I guess I'm done. Thanks. So I went to Penn State undergrad. I went to Temple Law School, and then I stayed in Philadelphia after law school I didn't think I was going to be coming back to Erie. In fact, I thought I was going to be somewhere on the East Coast. So I started practicing law in Philadelphia as a very young guy, 24 years old. And my dad was an excellent lawyer in Erie, and he said, I wasn't getting into court, and I wanted to get into court because I wanted to litigate. I wanted to learn how to do that. And my dad said, what you need to do is go get a job with the Attorney General's Office Torts Litigation Section. What is that? What it is it's trial by fire for a young lawyer to learn how to do civil litigation. And so what they do in that office is they defend PennDOT, they defend the state police, they defend DCNR, they defend DEP, the Department of Health, L&I, anybody that gets sued on a personal injury basis. They sue the Commonwealth, whether it's an employee or the agency itself, the Attorney General's office for personal injuries. The Attorney General's office steps in. And so that's what I did for 3 or 4 years, and I learned how to litigate. I walked into the office, I'd never taken a deposition, I'd been a lawyer less than a year, and they said, you're in a whole afternoon of depositions today. Like, okay, I've never done one. And I'm like, well, you'll do fine, here's the script, go do it. So I learned how to do civil litigation at the Torts Litigation Section office, and then my dad died, and I was trying to get back to Western Pennsylvania because it's a long drive from Philadelphia, and I'm the lawyer in the family, so I had to sort of help out. And so I took a transfer to the environmental crimes section of the Attorney General's office, and I became a state prosecutor in Meadville, Pennsylvania. And so in that capacity, I learned how to do criminal litigation. I did that. I was in charge of an office. I had 2 special agents and a secretary, and was involved in all aspects of, doing search warrants and, prosecuting people, putting them in jail, that sort of thing. What I liked about it more than the criminal side is the environmental part. And so I'm thinking, maybe I'll be an environmental lawyer. So I'm still pretty young at this point. So I went over to what used to be called DER, which is the Department of Environmental Resources, which became DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection. I went over for about 4 years. I was the water lawyer in Meadville. I did everything that had to do with wetlands, discharges, drinking water, and so on and so forth. And then I was getting ready to leave government service. I had 10 years in. I'm not a sort of a career government person. And I was promoted to regional counsel, which meant I was in charge of the office. And so I had a staff of lawyers and that sort of thing. After 3 years of that, Marion and I started having all these kids. And we didn't like the fact that we didn't have a parent in the house. We had childcare, very good childcare, but we didn't have a parent in the house. And my wife's a dentist, and so it was between seeing patients in our house and me building a private law practice, we made the decision that it made more sense for me to resign from my position and start up the law practice. And so I did that. That was about 25 years ago, and I've been fighting with the DEP pretty much ever since that day. In fact, every day since that, I've been fighting with the DEP. So my practice is about, it's just me, I'm a solo practitioner. About 50% of my practice is dealing with the DEP. I represent people on enforcement actions and that sort of thing. The DEP issues orders or penalties or whatever. I do a lot of that. I do a lot of oil and gas work, especially up in the northwestern part of the Commonwealth. I also do some zoning things and some other matters that, contaminated real estate transactions, things that typically come in front of the Commonwealth Court. My first oral argument in front of the Commonwealth Court was in 1989, to give you some idea how long I've been in front of the court. All right, so that's my background. So why am I interested in serving on the Commonwealth Court? A lot of people don't even know what the Commonwealth Court is, and it's really sort of an oddball court. It's kind of unique to Pennsylvania, I think. So when you think about a court structure, you've got the trial court that's on the bottom. We know that mostly is the Court of Common Pleas. And then you've got an appellate court or two. In Pennsylvania, we have the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which is the biggest appellate court, the highest one on the chain. And then the Pennsylvania Superior Court in the middle. Well, what happened in the 1970s is there was this explosion of state agencies. Whether, we waived sovereign immunity, which is what I did in torts. And you had the DEP, started becoming more and more active, and L&I, labor and industry, and all these agencies started doing all these things. And as people challenged those things, it went to the Superior Court. And the Superior Court was like, hey, we don't know government stuff. We're getting overwhelmed. We need some help. And so the General Assembly, our legislature, went back and they created this separate court. And it's called the Commonwealth Court. And all it does is deal with government stuff. So if you have state agencies like DEP, for example, and they issue an order to somebody, then it goes to the Environmental Hearing Board. This is my world. And then from the Environmental Hearing Board, then it goes to the Commonwealth Court. And so I was chastised when I first had one of my caucus discussions, because I was saying, well, you know, they're state agencies and they go to Commonwealth. And he said, oh my God, don't say state agencies. Talk about things that people understand. So if you think about, you know, the PUC gets appealed there, the DEP. But think about it this way. When you turn on the lights, that's the Commonwealth Court. When you flush your toilet, that's the Commonwealth Court. When you're having a zoning problem, that's the Commonwealth Court. You want to start a business? The Commonwealth Court. You want to carry a weapon? And the municipality says, well, we're not going to give you a permit. The Commonwealth Court. So the Commonwealth Court really is sort of the gatekeeper between the citizenry and the government. And the government, if you think about it, the more the government does, the more they interfere with your private freedoms and private property rights. And the difference between our country and a communist country is private property rights. I'm a champion of private property rights. I've been fighting for oil and gas private property rights for 20 years now. So the Commonwealth Court really is a critically important court, and half the people in Pennsylvania don't even know what it is. Now you folks know what it is, and it's extremely important. And so what we need on the court are conservative judges. They're not justices, they're judges. Because what happens is the liberal judges tend to side with the government, and the conservative judges tend to side the other way. And this fall we have a 4-4 split. Every now and again the court has a decision that's so big that the whole court hears it. Usually it's a 3-judge panel, but every now and again you have something that's really important and the whole court will hear it. Right now, when this seat gets vacated that I'm running for, we're going to have a 4-4 split. And if a Democrat wins it, I can tell you right now, those big decisions, when the court hears it en banc by all 9 judges, they're going to side with the government. And I don't think that's what we want. So I'll give you an example of what can happen when the Commonwealth Court makes a bad decision. So about 2012, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, somebody was fined by the DEP. And they said, well, I want to use the right to know law, which is our Freedom of Information Act or Open Records Act, whatever you want to call it. We call it the right to know law in Pennsylvania. I want to use the right to know law to figure out, well, how did you calculate this penalty that you want from me? It was, the $50,000 penalty. DEP didn't want to tell them how they calculated it. So the fellow was using the right to know law, went to the Commonwealth Court. Commonwealth Court said, no, the DEP does not have an obligation to turn over the worksheet that tells you how they calculated the penalty. Now, when I was a regional counsel in Meadville, it wouldn't have even occurred to me that you would assess a penalty against somebody and not tell them how you calculated it. But the Commonwealth Court came up with this decision, and ever since then, when I deal with the DEP, and they say, we want to penalize your client this much, I say, well, how did you calculate it? They won't tell me, because the Commonwealth Court made a really bad decision in 2012. So we cannot have judges like that. I mean, we need to have judges that have common sense, that, conservative values, that understand that, they're not supposed to legislate from the bench. I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of qualifications. I've been doing this a long time. I think I have the proper judicial temperament, so I think I'm well suited for the position. And I'll finish my remarks with Ronald Reagan. I became a Republican when Ronald Reagan was around. That was my first president I voted for when I was at Penn State. So I guess I'm done again. So he said the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And that kind of summarizes how I'm approaching this judicial race, is that we really need judges that are kind of looking out for the citizens and not so much for the government. And I would also be remiss if I didn't say, our petitions are over there. We would appreciate it if you would sign them. And one of the petitions is for Judge Anne Marie Wheatcraft. She's not here tonight. She's at another event in the eastern part of the state. She's the president judge of Chester County. She's got, I think she's been around for 25 years, 15 of which she was a prosecutor. She's a very impressive person. She supervises treatment courts with veterans and drug problems and things like that. I've known her now for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm proud that she's my sort of running mate in this, and she's a terrific candidate. So I would encourage you to also sign her petition. Thank you very much.
But I would like to introduce our last speaker, Senator Vogel, to come up and introduce us to the beautiful painting we see well, to my left and your right, or the other way around.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. Whoever was in charge of the banquet had a great facility, got a lot of great people here, and I want to thank everyone in Beaver County for doing what you did last fall in the election, for electing me and Josh and Roman and President Trump. And like you said, the judges, we need to be very concerned about these judge races because we bang our heads against the wall every day in Harrisburg with the courts. Like you said, they think they want to be legislators and they're judges. So anyhow, so that's my speech on that. But anyhow, this portrait over here on the side, and there's a little story that comes with that. The gentleman used to be our veterinarian many years ago, retired, moved to Key West, Florida. And he sent me this painting of this portrait of President Trump back at Christmas time. I'm going to read you what he wrote here. It says, "Dear Elder, I am sending this print that I obtained the original oil painting on December 5th, 2024. The artist came over from Cuba 30 years ago and got his citizenship 8 years ago. He has painted many paintings and portraits and is very popular in the Keys. I told him that the Trump portrait was exceptional and suggested that he make copyrighted prints. He is a true story of what an immigrant that did it the right way can do." So that's the story on the print over there. I hope everybody bids on it. And enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.